All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a test, and I am going to try and get this right here. I am at Jones Memorial AME Zion Church, and I am going to try and make an attempt to do a video of how they turn on their system, get everything operating, and so there are no glitches. This is for training purposes for the media team that is here at Jones Memorial. So this is my first time using this selfie stick and this particular setup, but I am taking a page from AJ, the CEO. Thanks, AJ. And I'm using what I got so that I can try and do this setup. So first off, I'm going to do a little walkthrough. The system is already on, and this will probably be edited, but I am going to turn the camera around here and do a little walkthrough because the system is already on. So camera around. Okay. And as we can see here, this setup is a setup I installed probably a couple of years ago now. It's been a while. But they have 6 TVs, 65s up here in the front. These are 55s on both sides. So there's one facing the pulpit, and then because this sanctuary is 100 foot long, there's a second one on both sides that is facing the rear of the congregation. So as you can see, a pretty simple setup, nothing too technical about it, but that's what they got going on as far as displays. Now they just recently, probably about I'd say 6 months ago, changed their media booth and did this enclosure. Nice carpentry, and the reason why is because they installed a bathroom upstairs. So that section over there is actually an upstairs bathroom, and to balance it out, they enclosed the media section up here. Inside here, and you'll have to excuse the mess of wires because it's been a work in progress for a long time now. But in this particular setup, we've got a standard Mac Mini, Blackmagic ATEM, your Shure wireless microphone setup is up there. They are running a PreSonus rack mount 32 channel mixer, and it is controlled with the PreSonus software on the tablet. They pretty much have a set it and forget it when it comes to the sound, but for the most part, if they do need to make any changes, corrections, or whatever to the audio side of it, they can do that via the tablet. Now, as far as software is concerned, like I said, I have the system up and running now, and I am going to shut everything down to make sure that whoever is reviewing this will be able to see the standard startup procedure. But what we have here as far as software, this is a Zoom meeting that's up in the forefront, and it's getting its picture from the Blackmagic ATEM. The presenter software is the presentation software of choice, and it's feeding to a window capture. This is OBS. OBS is picking this up so that it can also stream to Facebook when you hit start streaming. So that way you can actually stream to 2 social media scenarios at the same time. OBS is sending what it's getting from presenter out to Facebook, and then Zoom is picking up its input from the Blackmagic ATEM, and therefore whatever I change on in presenter, it changes in both places at the same time. You can see I've got that image showing there, and then over here in presenter it changes. I'm sorry, in zoom it does the same thing. I'll just put it back on that for now. So that's how that works. The issue that they may have been that I've heard that they're having on occasion is that the displays are not getting its picture from the Blackmagic. Sometimes Zoom is not getting its source. So I'd like to point out some troubleshooting tips and some reasons why that could possibly be the case. Number one, if I go into the Mac system settings, I can go into the display settings, and the one thing that you want to verify is that you have two screens, because if you launch presenter and this is not recognizing that there are two screens, then presenter doesn't see a secondary display and it doesn't want to do anything. Also, while I'm here, another key point that you might want to pay attention is that the second display is an extended mode display. So if I go here to the second display, it should say extended. It should not say mirroring. If it's mirroring, it's basically like having one display, and presenter doesn't want to act right. So you want to make sure that the display is set for the second one to be extended. Other than that, that's pretty much confirmation. Now, another reason why you might not get two displays here is if the ATEM is not recognizing. I can show you here on this particular ATEM. We've got the computer coming in on number one, and then the camera that they have here, they've got this nice Canon camera showing an image of the sanctuary, and it's coming in on number two. The ATEM is feeding a video over Ethernet extender. This REI extender is the first place that it hits, and that is because that REI extender has a pass-through. Therefore, it's coming from the computer and the camera into the ATEM, and then from the ATEM the output is going into the REI down here first. Once it hits the REI, because it has a pass-through, then the pass-through also feeds the HDMI extender for the TVs in the sanctuary there. So the REI sends its initial signal downstairs to the fellowship hall. So that's your workflow from the computer to the ATEM to the REI, and then the REI to the splitter. You can see there are four outputs on the splitter, even though there are 6 TVs, and that's because the primary 4 go to the 2 in the front, and then the other 2 in the front that are facing the pulpit. Then it splits to the 2 back TVs because they were actually added later in the part of the process. They weren't part of the initial installation. So there's a Y off of the front going to the one on this right side, and then a Y off of that one over there going to the rear television on this side. And that's how all 6 TVs get fed from just a 4-way split. Okay, now on occasion in the startup process, and we'll do that, but on occasion sometimes the 4-way splitter doesn't like its signal. That may be due to it not being started up correctly, or something with the transmitter and receivers. But on occasion, when the sanctuary TVs don't get a picture, all you have to do is unplug each one of the network cables, the HDMI cable and the power, wait 10 seconds, plug it all back in. It transmits to the receivers that are behind each one of the TVs, and everything works just fine. So again, getting back to the software, I am going to close this. I am going to exit here. I am going to end this meeting. And I am going to close presenter. And as you can see, the background wallpaper for the extended TVs is just the Hemi Zion logo. And I am going to shut down the computer. And shut down. Alright, so the computer's off, which means the TVs have no signal. And at a point, they will say not receiving a signal. And then underneath the table here, there's a power strip. And I can hit the button on that power strip, and that kills power to pretty much the majority of the things that are in this media booth. The amps and all of that no longer have power. The splitters no longer have power. The computer no longer has power. The internet that comes up here to this media booth is constantly on because we have internet splitter here to provide internet connections to the computer and the devices that all need to be on the same local network, as well as there is an access point right here that is also constantly getting internet feeds. So that way, if there's someone in the sanctuary that needs an internet connection from the modem that's downstairs in the offices, this system does not have to be on for this access point to work. So we are going to, and as you can see, all the TVs now are showing that they don't have a signal. Therefore, that's that. All right, so I am going to come in and turn everything on. So if I am the sound person that's coming in on Sunday morning and I want to turn the system on, first thing I do is come in and hit the power on the power strip. And once I get the power on the power strip, as you can see, that turns on the ATEM. That turns the power on the mixer, and it also provides power to the amps. Not turning those on because I'm not doing anything audio related at this particular time. But now the mixer's on, the ATEM is on, and everything is getting power, including the receivers for the microphones and including the splitters. So now if I turn on the Mac Mini, make sure I push the button. There we go. And we have ignition on the Mac Mini. So I can put in the password. Trying to do this with one hand. And boom. That's what comes up on the Mac Mini. And that's the Chrome that they're using. I can minimize that. As you can see, Universal Control is the software that controls the microphone system if you need to control it directly on the computer, but in most cases you're going to use a tablet to control it. But at least this tells you that it is on, it is connected, and it's being seen through the network. So therefore, the tablet should also be able to see it and control it. So for that purpose, you can either close or minimize this. It really doesn't matter because you're not going to be using that software. Now, as you can see, there's still nothing on the TVs right now. So that is one thing that was a concern in this particular setup. is that the TVs are not coming on directly when you turn the system on, because as you saw before we shut it down, it had the AME Zion background on the TV screens. So if that is the case, you can come down here to the four-way splitter. I'm trying to do this with one hand, and unplug the power and the HDMI connection. And let's see if that, wait 10 seconds. I'm doing this with one hand. Alright, so let's see if that provides power back to the TVs. And it does not. So the correct way to do it then is to go ahead and unplug everything from the splitter. That's all four of the Ethernet cables, and that's the power, completely unplugged. Now I'm going to try and prop this up here and see if I can put this all back together in the picture. Alright, so these are numbered, but they don't have to be in the correct numerical order. But that's 4, 3, 2, and 1. And HDMI back in, and power back in. And voila, we have picture on the TVs. So if you come in and you turn the system on, and you know, the regular way, it's just one little extra step that you have to do in order to get the TVs to work correctly. I will say that the reason for that is because we're using a transmitter that's going well over 100 feet, and therefore sometimes it just doesn't push very strongly. In hindsight now, the runs that I would use for the TV would be fiber HDMI cables and a different kind of splitter that is a lot more stable. But again, this was done many years ago, and because of that technology that they were installed with at that particular time, that's the setup that you have. Maybe in the future we'll change that out to fiber HDMI runs, and you know, govern ourselves accordingly. But as you can see now, we have the camera is actually what's providing picture, because the ATEM wakes up and defaults to input number 1. If I hit number 2 and cut to that, you can see that the picture on the TVs is now what's coming from the computer. This computer that has display number 1 with the Windows background, and display number 2 is their church logo. I'll go back to the camera setting. Alright, so that's the little hiccup that we have with the splitters to get the TVs to work. Now if I want to launch any software, the first software that I would launch would be Presenter. And hopefully whoever is leaving is not shutting or logging out of Presenter. That way the volunteer does not have to find the password and all of that. They should just be closing the software, and therefore when the next volunteer comes to start this process, all they have to do is launch Presenter. And as you can see, it launches with the secondary window capture. That's for other uses, but for now it's set up that way. We don't necessarily have to have this in the picture, but I may change that before I leave. So when Presenter first opens up, if I cut to the computer now, you'll see the screens are black. because when presenter first opens up, there's nothing selected. So I have to go into any one of these. It doesn't really matter. And I think the last one I was in was here, and I did that. So now that I've selected something, it's on the screens, and we know presenter is working. My next software that I would launch would be OBS. And OBS comes up the same way it did when it was shut down, and therefore, because that's what I selected on presenter, it's also receiving its information from presenter. So that tells me that that connection is working. If I wanted to verify that I've already verified the camera is working because it's coming through the Blackmagic. So if I were to switch on the Blackmagic, you can see that it's also switching on OBS, and that's because OBS is receiving whatever the Blackmagic is doing. Please note that correction. I said that OBS was receiving from presenter, but that was incorrect. It's actually receiving from the Blackmagic. So whatever I switch on the Blackmagic is what switches in OBS. That's because this OBS software is broadcasting to Facebook. So therefore you want it to come from your switcher as opposed to what you're doing in presenter. And then lastly, this church uses Zoom. So I could go to my Zoom software. And right now I'm just generically logged in. But I think the way they do it is they join a meeting, and whoever the administrator is that starts the meeting, they will make this computer the host. And therefore the people in the Zoom meeting would see what is being displayed from this setup. For right now, in training purpose, I'm just going to create a new meeting just to verify that Zoom is also picking up picture from the Blackmagic switcher. So as you can see in Zoom, if I cut on that, it's also doing the same thing that OBS is doing. So everything is working. Now, I also noticed that when you start Zoom, I don't know if it's the same when you join a meeting or start a meeting, but this little section up here where it says original sound for musician, it comes up as off. Make sure that you click on that and turn it on, because that makes the quality of the sound of what people hear on Zoom a whole lot better than the default setting. Zoom was created for conference calls and therefore video meetings and that type of thing. So therefore the default audio is not for that. Whereas you're trying to broadcast a service over Zoom, they at least did the good feature of adding this original sound for musicians so that you could broadcast a more dynamic sound or audio going through the Zoom software. So make sure you click on this, and just by clicking on it, it turns it on, and that'll make the sound on Zoom a whole lot better. Now, for all intensive purposes, you're ready to conduct your Sunday morning. Instead of me starting a meeting, I've joined the meeting in Zoom. I can minimize these things out of the way. I would probably want to keep OBS up and running, because if the microphones were on, this would be jumping, letting me know that I'm getting audio from the ATEM. And I've just noticed that on the ATEM also, if I get a shot of this, the sound comes in on this channel number 1 right here from the mixer. This should always be on. Otherwise, whatever's coming into this ATEM will be picture only. The people won't hear anything. So that one has to be on. All of the rest of these can be off. Definitely off here, 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 and here for each individual channel. There is nothing plugged into the second mic number 2 input, so that definitely stays off. The only time you would want to turn anything on in this particular case is if you were playing media from the computer that's coming in on channel 2, then you would turn the sound on for that so that they could hear the media that's coming from the computer. But other than that, you don't need that on either. So the only one that should be on is mic number 1. And then you can switch back and forth on the screen accordingly. But as you can see, by turning mic number 1 on, now even OBS is showing some sound coming through from the sound system. And even though nobody is here or using a microphone, the choir mics are on, and therefore it's picking up the room in general as your noise floor, for lack of a better term. So like I said, you can probably keep OBS in the background so that you can glance every now and then and see, that your sound is working correctly. In order to send to Facebook, you would definitely have to hit start streaming. We'll go through all of that in another video, but this purpose of this video is to show how you can turn everything on and everything is working. Like I said, your camera, if I cut back to the computer, if you're going through the announcements, the mission statement, whatever we've got going on the computer, it's showing in all places. It's showing on Zoom, and again, I'll probably turn this off so that it's not being used, but it's also showing in OBS. So that's it. Just want to verify that everything is working, and there should be no particular hiccups to start service on any given Sunday. So hopefully this video is helpful, and I'll do my editing to kind of piece it together and all that good stuff. But for now, we'll go back to that and say thank you for joining, and everyone have a blessed day.